what I'd like to do now is to turn to our two designated commentators, and then after that we will open the floor up to questions. First I'd like to introduce Professor Andrew Yo, who is a professor of political science at Catholic University, and he received his PhD from Cornell University, and he has written a terrific book entitled Activist Alliances and Anti-US Base Protests, which does a wonderful comparative analysis of anti-base movements in Okinawa, Korea, and the Philippines. So, Andrew, if you could just stay seated and give your comments, and then I'll return to the second comment.
Thank you, Professor Mochizuki, and for also doing the plug for my book. I'd like to thank the Okinawa Prefecture and also the organizers of this conference for inviting me here, and it's also an honor to share the stage with Governor Onaga and former Secretary of Defense Bill Perry. You know, I have to say, I haven't been to Okinawa in over a decade now, but the issue of U.S. bases in Okinawa and the Futema replacement facility and the ongoing anti-base struggle still remain close to me. As Professor Mochizuki mentioned, I published a book in 2011 on the topic of U.S. alliances and anti-base opposition, which included a chapter on Okinawa, and I've continued to write and comment on anti-base protests, most recently on Jeju Island in South Korea. Now, in Jeju Island, despite the completed construction of the naval base, the residents of Gangjang Village continue to protest and hold a Catholic Mass outside the base each day, and I know they've drawn inspiration from activists in Kinoko. As Governor Onaga mentioned, it's been more than 2 decades since the announcement of the Futema relocation plan. It's actually 22 years to be exact. That's almost an entire generation. Children who are born that year would now be graduating from college at this point. So certainly, Tokyo and Washington never anticipated this issue to drag out for so long. Meanwhile, the people of Okinawa have experienced disappointment, not only in the inability of power holders to reduce the base burden, but also in the process of democracy itself. Governor Onaga did not state it directly, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he mentioned on more than one occasion strong political opposition to the Futema relocation facility plan throughout Okinawa and even in parts of Japan. This opposition begins with Governor Onaga himself, who has a mandate to represent the will of the Okinawan people. Governor Onaga also remarked that the public will to scrap the Futema relocation facility plan have been demonstrated in recent local elections. This includes the Nago City mayoral elections and the Okinawa Prefectural Assembly elections in 2016. Yet the will of the Okinawan people have been overruled, quite literally, by the government of Japan. Meanwhile, Okinawans are reminded each day of their base burden by the accidents, crashes, noise, pollution, and crimes associated with U.S. bases. One can be sympathetic to Okinawans, particularly those who face real grievances which affect their daily quality of life. Yet there is a reason why the Futema relocation plan has not gone away and will continue to loom ahead unless Okinawans and their supporters manage to shift the thinking of Japanese political leaders on the U.S.-Japan alliance and Japanese national security. In my book, I refer to something called an elite security consensus. And it's this consensus which often exists within host governments. That is, policymakers and nations which host U.S. bases, such as Japan, South Korea, Germany, or Italy, often believe the presence of U.S. military bases and the security relationship with the United States remains imperative to their national security strategy. Nowhere does the security consensus run higher than in Japan. The foreign policy and national security establishment in Tokyo consider the alliance and U.S. bases as the cornerstone of their defense strategy. Of course, the political left and far-right nationalist parties in Japan have called for less reliance on the US and or increasing the power of the role of the Japanese self-defense forces. But these voices often remain outside the core of Japanese national security making. And if we also think about regional security, it also leads to different types of implications for peace and security. The challenges facing the anti-base opposition have become more difficult in the recent regional security climate. The rapid pace of North Korean nuclear missile tests the past 2 years, including several missiles which were fired over Japan, have served as a constant reminder of Japan's vulnerability in Northeast Asia. Likewise, Chinese ambitions in the South China Sea, coupled with the modernization of the People's Liberation Army and ever-increasing Chinese defense spending, does not create a political climate for Tokyo to pull away from the US alliance or abandon the Futenma relocation facility plan. In other words, the security consensus may be tightening, not loosening. So as Professor Mochizuki stated in an early exchange with myself on this issue, the challenge for the Okinawans is to find some kind of basing alternative which could address the security imperatives and geopolitical calculations of the Japanese and US governments, while at the same time reducing the burdens of Okinawans. Okinawan leaders must somehow be able to find and work with sympathetic officials and policymakers in Tokyo to find a solution. Now, I'm sure this has been tried many times over the past decade. And there were periods where I thought the Okinawans might achieve their goal as the security consensus waned. Specifically, during the brief tenure of the DPJ's Yukio Hatoyama from 2009 to 2010, which also coincided with reduced US military spending and fiscal tightening following the global economic crisis. But the security climate in Northeast Asia is more severe than it was a decade earlier. Now, Dr. Mike Green at CSIS, just up the road from here, has stated that the Hinoko Air Base option is to date the least bad solution for Futenma's replacement. The US government doesn't see a credible alternative option operationally. So thinking about Okinawa's base burden moving forward, there are still longer-term plans for relocating some Marines from Okinawa to Guam, but that does not directly address Okinawan opposition to current base construction that's taking place in Hinoko as we speak, and as Governor Onaga showed in his slides earlier. So this causes me to reflect on just the fundamental problem of providing security for Japan, for the region of the United States, and also the security needs of Okinawans. And here we have to ask, when we talk about peace and security, who is this peace and security for? Who is the reference point of peace and security? For Okinawans, they think about peace from the perspective of human security. It's about providing peace and security for their people, for their residents, for the local community. But for states, security and peace refers to security for states, for national governments. And this is really the bias of international relations, and really a realist version of international relations, where you privilege the security of the state over all others. And I think finding some kind of solution in middle ground requires finding a new narrative or a new paradigm. Now, Governor Onaga mentioned the upcoming Trump-Kim talks that may take place. I mean, we don't know, we're holding our breath, but Governor Onaga implies that the security situation is changing, and that's true. The security situation is not static, it goes up and down. So if the upcoming Trump-Kim summit paves the way for North Korean denuclearization, and that's a big if, a more secure, peaceful path for Northeast Asia might be realized. A new paradigm or a new narrative about Japanese and Northeast Asian security needs to be shaped for any satisfactory solution on the basis issued to be achieved by Okinawans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Yo. Our